variety of stakeholders for literally the last couple of decades, most recently in Vermont. And I'll probably not say this exactly right, but as I understand it, she has built what is essentially now the model in Vermont, in Rutland, for the Rutland Parent-Child Center, which is a second generation or a different generation of childcare, which includes the entire family. Her approach to this was not only engaging the local community, but directly engaging the state and the legislature, which she was able to secure direct funding. And over the last 5 years has put in place what is a role model facility and model literally only 50 miles away from here. When I became aware of this, I said, well, we have to figure out how to get some of this knowledge base over here. But I really didn't believe that the person who would do that would really be willing to come. And Mary has been gracious and I think genuinely excited to jump in. Today is literally her first day. So I want to welcome her.
Okay.
Is there anything I said there that wasn't quite right?
No, that's wonderful. Thank you.
So Mary will work out of this office part of the time. She'll work remotely part of the time, and she will work in the field probably the majority of the time. We've already begun the effort, and in fact, North Creek will be one of the very first nodes that we engage on this. And I'm going to work with her on laying out the work plan as we really get involved formally in the work today. So are we good now?
We're good to go.
Are we up?
We're live.
Okay. So we can go live.
All right, I will officially call the meeting to order at 8:10. Good morning, everyone. This should be, we don't have a very big agenda today, but we'll start with the only committee meeting that happened since our last monthly meeting was the Audit and Finance Committee. Kathy, can you give us
I would be happy to, thank you. We met on the 14th of April at 4 o'clock. You have the minutes before you. And it we covered first of all, we were introduced to Eric, which was a lovely conversation as you've just had. We discussed the minutes of the meeting of the prior, and we did pass those. We also went over the financials for March, and they were unanimously approved. We also have those in the packet here. Oh, yes, we have.
They're behind the minutes for the audit.
And we did also go into some detail with the staff and Jen over the grants, one of which you've heard some information. And that was it. I don't know if any of the other participants had anything to add. If not, that's my report.
So Deanna is not with us today. I'm going to struggle to get through our financials.
She left you in charge, you told me.
Yeah. So they're in your packet. They're behind the Audit and Finance Committee meetings. The summary is page 2 there. We continue to be in a good financial position in terms of both our cash and our assets. You can see the dollar amounts there. There's nothing unusual about any of the things that are flowing through the basic P&L. We do always try to point out the things that don't necessarily make sense, like current liabilities looks like a big number, but essentially what it really is the monies that we have to set aside for things like FSA and our retirement funds, that we have to hold them there until they're finally accepted. There is still $32,000 in what we refer to as board designated funds. There is $137,000 in restricted funds, which can only be spent in Queensbury at the direction of the board. That $432,000 in board designated funds essentially means that it doesn't sit in our operating fund for the year, but it is available to us. For 5 years, we've been carrying this. I'm super excited about the fact that we're now developing strategies where we could potentially be looking at this and bring to you ideas that may be a more productive use than simply carrying this money on our balance sheet year after year after year. What's really catalyzed that is this grant work that we're doing. In order to diversify our funding, which you all know that we are principally municipally funded by the county, by Queensbury, by the city. That has been a struggle both to maintain those investment levels, but also in some of the political process that surrounds it. Membership has stayed relatively flat. We raised it from 5 years ago in the COVID era from say $60,000 or $70,000 a year towards $100,000 a year, but it has stayed relatively flat since then. Membership by itself is not going to lift us into a situation where we have diversified and what I consider to be more robust funding, which means that the third area that we're aggressively pursuing is grant work. Now, grant work can be a zero-sum game. Many of you that work in the field understand this. We are not looking gratuitously for any grant that we can possibly apply for. I think, by the way, Ed was really good at that on behalf of the city, and they're still dealing with many, many grants that they're trying to figure out exactly how best to execute. That's not the approach we take. What we do is we look down the areas that we're already doing work. So we're doing work, for instance, in the broadband field. John leads efforts every single week to engage the community in that. If there's a grant that would be aligned with that, that's the place we look. The childcare thing came to us because of our position as a change management leader in the region. I still feel like we're out there talking about housing, we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about business and economic development that goes beyond the boundaries of Warren County. So I don't think this is a big stretch for us to be able to add an element of soft infrastructure like childcare. But it is definitely a new place. Now, all of these provide a management overlay to whatever our direct costs are. So we'll start to see Mary's direct costs. We are reimbursed in advance by the Adirondack Community Foundation for her work, is what we went through with the Audit and Finance Committee. We've signed a grant agreement for just under $80,000 with the Adirondack Community Foundation. We believe that Mary's costs will be less than that amount of money. Exactly how much is still a matter of discussion, but it's probably at least $10,000 less. That is essentially what would be our piece for overseeing this. It's not significant, but it is a precedent for us to begin to try to figure out how the investment of time that we're already making in these conversations can be properly reimbursed. If we're successful with this, we'll continue to scale this up, but only in ways that are actually sustainable, ways that don't stretch us beyond the work that we're already doing. There are 2 other grants that we're doing work in. There's an update that we'll go through later on that. We went through this in detail because those expenses will start flowing, both the revenues that essentially come in from the grant agreements as well as the expenses associated with them. They'll begin to start flowing through our financials as soon as next month. In terms of our day-to-day operating expenses, our income is slightly less because I continue to be bullish and try to push all of us to greater levels of membership. We set a target of $120,000. We're going to be somewhere around $100,000 if we just froze now, so you can see some of that shortfall already reflected in our finances. But meanwhile, we've been managing our expenses to be aligned with that. So we're actually essentially on target for budget, even though both income and expenses are slightly behind what we had budgeted. I'm not sure if there are any questions. I don't know if Deanne would say I did that justice.
Well, yeah.
Any questions? Okay, and then you have your annual meeting minutes and our regular March monthly meeting minutes. If everyone wants to review them, ask any questions, discussion. If not, you all feel comfortable, we can go to the close of those 3 items. 4. Everybody good? I think I can do this all in one, right, Alfred? Thank you. I will take a motion to approve the March 2026 financials, the March 25th monthly meeting minutes, and the annual board meeting monthly minutes. I have a motion.
So moved.
Kathy, seconded by Tim, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Jim again.
Okay, so we have a bigger packet than we've had in a little while, and that's because we haven't talked about a lot of this business while we've been trying to do the annual meeting and some of the other administrative things. The first page does go through the new team members. You can see some of the details from both Eric and Mary there. I encourage all of you to get to know them in whatever ways is appropriate and convenient, but this is new energy to our teams. We only have so many chances that we get to infuse ourselves with new talents, new personalities, new ideas, but I'm thrilled with both of them. I think they're going to add enormous capacity. You obviously know that Bob continues to work with us, both us and the LDC, in our approaches to try to engage and grow the entrepreneurial network and elements of what we call the hidden economy. In addition, there's a chart or a page on number 2. You may not even know that we have had a very high-performing intern here all semester. His name is Cameron Porter. Cameron sought us out. I got a letter from Cameron over the Christmas holidays saying, I would like to intern at the EDC. I then learned that he was part of the BOCES early college program, which we have a long history of receiving interns from. And he said, I'm already committed to Quinnipiac into a program of finance and economic development there, and I would like to get to work with you. I loved that approach. When I met him, I was not surprised that he is literally a stunning leader and athlete, and you can see some of his prowess here. He was just recently featured as the athlete of the week by one of the television stations down in Albany. They did a fairly long profile. He's about to break many of the records, if he hasn't already, around lacrosse and Queensbury. He's a very, I think, soft-spoken but strong leader. I'm thrilled that he sees us as a place that can help him on his journey. And he's been doing work quietly to help us in a whole variety of fronts, only one day a week. The way that their internship works is on Fridays, they're able to come join us. But during school holidays and during periods where there are tests, they can spend more time here. Occasionally I'll walk in here on a Wednesday and he will be the only one here working away. He's been fantastic. If you ever get a chance to be here on a Friday, I would encourage you to meet him. If you ever see him in the community, I would like you to know he's been a real asset to us. I'm hopeful that he will join us for the summer and maybe beyond. Madison Griffin is another intern that the BOCES program is going to unleash on us starting this week. I think this is a reputation that we are a place that not only will receive, but can provide people with portfolio that they can then use. And I love that reputation as well. She approached me and said, I like to do creative work that boundaries on the world of business. The internships that I've had to this point have not generally allowed me to do that work with people who are self-actualized. They're driven in an unusual way for 17 and 18-year-olds, and they think that this is a place that they can be. This is not who we were a few years ago. I don't think very many youth thought of themselves as assets or even thought of the EDC at all. I really think this is a really positive sign. And I'm thrilled that the team here figures out how to gracefully work with this. They don't see this as a tax, they see this as an added benefit. It adds an injection of not only youth, but new ideas. It keeps us connected to the parts of the community that we are not. So Maddie will start here on Friday. John, let's talk a little bit about business activity.
Okay, on the business activity chart, you see monthly here, we're up one, net one, to now we're at 81 active engagements that we're working on. Big takeaway from the month is we have 3 new real estate inquiries, basically. One is and one is interesting because it's a firm out of Saratoga looking to come up to Mount Swallows area. And I think they've announced on the time work.
Yeah, they actually went to the mayor's 100-day event. They were there at Forest. They're looking to relocate to a Primes Island facility that has been vacant for some time, and Jeff has been deeply involved in this for us.
Yeah, so and they're down in Saratoga now. The scenario there is they couldn't find a place to build down there, at least not affordably. One, there was no availability. They want to lease, and there's no availability down there. And the other one's just what was available or could be available was just massively expensive. So I think there's going to be probably a little more interest in that way going forward. We had another inquiry from a broker who's looking for a 5 to 10 acre site in light industrial.
Again, a relocation from south of here, looking to come up here to access 2 things. One, they believe a more accessible workforce, and 2, properties that they can't find at the right cost and scale.
Can you say again how large are they as a building?
So the first is 2022, I believe now, with the intention to grow maybe by a handful more. That's the one that's headed to Primes Island. The one that's looking at space that is actually our space in Queensbury Park has roughly 40 people now, and again, would be looking to grow if they were able to relocate.
Yeah, and the last one was basically an inquiry from a landlord here in Algoma, Joe Close, and his team, Zach Layton. They have a facility out in Exit 18. I don't know if you've been out there, but if you go out there lately, it's a massively open up area, and they needed some kind of consultation with us on what would be the best fit to do in that 40 acres spot, so.
So there's a couple of things to discern out of this. First, that there is, for the first time, what I consider to be sustained, not just one-off interest in the properties we have. The second is, we represent the city and Tech Meadows as one asset. We actually own lots in Queensbury Industrial Park across from the airport. We also have another lot on Dix Avenue that is on our balance sheet. But there's actually more developable land that is held by private developers, whether it's Joe, whether it's the Barbers at Native Park, and others. We are ambivalent about whether it's our property, the city's property, or a private developer's property. When somebody comes to us, we try to help find the best possible fit for them. And I want to be clear that that is our approach. At no point do we advance our property and not expose them to what the other options are. I think what we're going to see out of all this is one in each category. We're going to see development on our property, and I think we're likely to close on one of the several inquiries we have for Queensbury Park this year. That's significant. We had the cannabis operation that relocated there 2 years ago. That broke the seal of more than 20 years where there was no development there. Now we have multiple credible entities that are looking for the right time and the right lot. The one that I think is most likely is probably going to buy the first 3 lots together, which is essentially, those of you that have been here long enough will remember, is what Hacker Boat was originally looking at back in the day. If somebody had said 5 years ago that somebody would be willing to pay, recently we had all these properties reappraised and their property values have risen since their most recent appraisal 3 years ago. If somebody was willing to pay the appraised, now accelerated rate for those properties and buy all 3, I think we would have been thrilled. And now we have multiple entities that are looking at this. Meanwhile, Joe and his team came to us. They're the largest developers in our area that I don't think most people understand. He has now more than 450 people working out of that Queensbury facility all over the country in terms of big, large-scale, high-capacity electrical work. But he also owns hundreds of acres of property in Warren County. The most proximate is right behind his building. 41 acres of open space that he came to us and said, I'd like to not sell it to one distribution center. He said it would be better for the area if this turned into 4 or 5 enterprises that had perhaps more sustainable economic impact. And can you help us with that? That's wonderful. I mean, that's exactly what we should do. We didn't have to carry his property. We're seen as an asset that can help him develop the strategy. He's the one who's going to ultimately make the decision. It's going to benefit our largest community here in terms of both tax and economic impact. And we're seen as allies, not competitors. Joe's been a wonderful guy to work with. He has several hundred acres that he would like to develop into housing. He's the one that is pursuing the large-scale project in Lake George, where there's a potential of up to 400 housing units on that particular site. Joe is a really important asset and ally in our community. And the reason I'm spending so much time talking about it is when somebody comes to work with us and sees us as a supporter, I want to make sure that you see that the work that we've been doing to make sure that we're visible, accessible, and aligned is being recognized. I'm confident that Joe will have excellent uses of that property.
Concerning Pines Island, I'll probably be putting it on the city of Glens Falls board agenda for the IDA on May 14th. So not confirmed yet, but most likely. So we'll have more information in a couple weeks.
So the narrative that we don't support manufacturing or legacy large-scale employers, any of the traditional channels of economic development, it's just not true. The problem is that the demand is not linear. It comes in kind of these spurts. And it's all based upon the identity that you create, the accessibility that you create, as well as what lots you have. And if the lots are somebody else's lots like Joe's, and they're going to lead to the same outcome, then we're thrilled to provide the same amount of support that we would for any publicly owned lot. In addition, Prine's Island, which we've been talking about before, we're on the committee meeting to talk about that with the newly formed planning committee at the city. The potential alternate uses for Prine's Island was recognized by our new mayor in her recent address as something that the city has got under review. Next stop on that is to talk to the committee, but she talked in her comments about the fact that she would like public comment or some kind of public engagement to follow. And yeah, so we're talking now about how we would support that together with the city. And this,
But keep in mind,
this is
the
the LDC.
LDC owns the property.
I understand, but we remind people about that all the time. And we work with all of the various entities that are involved.
Maybe
And-
come to the May 14th LDC meeting about that.
What else?
So there's our other pie charts that kind of show you the breakdown. They haven't moved around too much. One that kind of jumps off to me is the real estate sector, which we do get a lot of inquiries from people either looking to do something with it and getting feedback on the market economy here, what's moving, what isn't. We also get the usual, or the inquiries for property or others, but that's the real estate sector. Seems to be pretty big. The breakdown between the municipalities hasn't really budged too much.
Although sometimes in that little tiny number is some interesting stuff. We're going up to meet with the new supervisor at the Horicon later today, John. It represents 1% of our current inflow, but there are 2 active projects that we're engaging with them in Horicon. And we got to figure out where does the town sit on this, and we're supporters of any appropriate development that is aligned with our larger goals, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the community is always 100% in line with that. So that's what we're attempting to do is to navigate that. But inside that 1% of our overall thing for Horicon, these are the only 2 commercial activities that have shown up there in the last several years. So the fact that we're seen as an ally and an asset in that, again, I think is positive, even if the kind of aggregate impact is small. So now that Eric is here, I've asked that the team start to look at how we reframe the way that we're presenting this information in terms of measures, in terms of format, in terms of a potential scorecard. But the preface to that is that I would like us to have stronger focus on connecting to our overall strategy. We've been very effective at getting the community to adopt what we consider to be certain understandings and fundamentals to the right dialogue about our future. The first was demography. We needed to understand what median age and median income meant. It was a struggle for 2 years to try to get people to acknowledge that we had to talk openly about the fact that we're one of the oldest places and one of the oldest places in America. And that has real implications, and it should drive strategy. I think after 2 years, we were able to drive that into the public lexicon. The discussions that we had about the demographic drought with the speakers that came from outside the area, that then led to a next wave, which was understanding what was our economy historically, not just in the last even 5 or 10 years, but as far back as we could go. We underwrote the first real comprehensive study of the area's economy, which, by the way, goes well beyond Warren County. All the things that we identified about tourism being at least $1 out of $3 coming from people who live outside the area is true. The only thing that's different is the proportion. If we go north of here, it's closer to $1 out of $2 comes from people who do not live in the community. The idea that we acknowledge that the public sector, and when I mean public sector, it's not necessarily just municipalities and school districts and what we consider to be kind of charitable not-for-profits. Our entire healthcare sector is not-for-profit, but it is clearly the center of our economic engine. And getting people to understand that we need to not only acknowledge that, but there are certain things we have to do to invest and support it that maybe don't look like traditional economic development. 340B and our advocacy around that for Hudson Headwaters and the hospital is an example of that. The idea of anything that would either threaten the most important economic as well as healthcare and social construct that we have for Northern New York is clearly an imperative that we should be involved in, and we are. The third element is everything else, but it's led by the things that we think we can have the maximum amount of impact and growth. Those are topics like what we're working with Bob on to help identify the elements of the hidden economy, people who are doing work remotely, people who are doing work independently, people who do not necessarily register with the Chamber of Commerce or come to any of our events, and yet are economic drivers here. They could typically do whatever it is that they do anywhere. They're choosing to do it here. That then leads to, well, why? And how can we do that in an intentional way to create the outcomes that we're after? If we'd like to reduce median age, if we'd like to increase median income, if we would like to ensure that we have intellectual capital that's invested in the things that are going to grow going forward, we should be intentional about that. We brought a speaker last year who talked about how another community had stepped into that by making their place a place that people like what we just talked about identify as a destination, as some place that they feel welcome. There's a lot of work to be done here, but our stuff that we talk about here doesn't necessarily always directly connect to those things. And we still sometimes struggle, even with our municipal partners, to get them to understand why are we advocating for housing. It's not because developers belong to the group, although they do. It's because none of this works if we don't have any place to receive net new people. Our tourism economy can't work. Our healthcare economy and not-for-profit economy can't work. Our emerging economy of people who are coming here to do whatever it is they do because this is where they want to be, none of it works if we don't have places to receive them. None of it works if we don't look to attract young families and people young enough to create students in our elementary and secondary schools and flow into SUNY Adirondack. All of this has to be intentional. And unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that we present to you looks disconnected. I don't think it is. It's not easy to discern this connection. I don't have the answers, but I've asked them to start thinking this way, which is why you're going to see the material presented slightly differently. And in this particular case, John helped us identify some of the things that we're involved in around what we consider to be still the primary constraint on how fast or how strong any of these sectors can grow. And that's housing supply. Remember that we, together with the LDC, were the primary sponsors of the county's housing study, which took almost 5 years to actually materialize, but then identified a need, depending on how you look at it, at between 1,200 and 2,500 housing units in Warren County to support the economy and the population that we have today, let alone what we would like it to be. Now, there is a tremendous amount of housing development going on. There's housing development that's been going on kind of at a steady pace in Queensbury, and there's obviously a surge in downtown Glens Falls. If you were to add all of it together, it represents about 30% of what it is that's needed, even if we took the small number. It's roughly 400 units. And you can see how much energy and investment was required to produce those 400 units. If we're going to get to 1,200, 1,500 units, it's going to take even more. So first thing we try to do is make sure you know where are we in this. We're obviously working with the city. It's what caused us to go spend $25,000, well more than we get paid by the city to do their work. To go do a study that said, how would Tech Meadows be an asset that could potentially deliver value in this way? This is not universally well received because it sounds like change. Wait a minute, this is where we're supposed to put some industrial piece of property. So we did the economic analysis to say, does it pay more in terms of economic value, long-term economic impact for our community to have a combination of business, industry, and housing, or should we just allow it to continue down the path, which, by the way, has not produced very much in 25 years? And we were willing to be out in front of that. We're further down the grieving cycle of this, through the part of being angry and arguing about it, and now on to the part of problem solving about it. But the rest of the community needs an opportunity to catch up here. There's going to be some angst about this. There already is in my conversations at the city. It feels jarring to say, I'm going to suggest to you that you reconsider the use of this property. And by the way, it's not straightforward. You know that better than anybody because you wrote a lot of the documents. We'd have to be thoughtful about the way the zoning was amended It's really not a change in zoning so much as it is an addition to the existing zoning definitions. And also, how would we engage the community and how would we explain this to people? There's EDA constraints on the money that originally set that property up, all of which have to be addressed. But ultimately, we need to have the conversation that says, would we like to continue to go down the path we've been going down for 20 years, or would we like to approach this differently? We took the position that we're going to aggressively pursue alternatives. We're going to study them as objectively as we can, and we're going to go stand in front of anybody, whether they're happy or not, to talk about it. We're in that now. You're going to see some of that in the next few months, and I'm very happy to see that the mayor is willing to engage all of the elements of the city in this process. That's the largest development that sits in front of us. And we believe that there's several hundred potential housing units that could develop there in ways that would meet gaps that we don't have any other strategy to meet. Things like townhomes, things like detached duplexes, things that would help 2 and 3, 4 bedroom facilities for young families that don't have an entry point into the housing market. We've done a lot of thoughtful work here. And any of you that want to go deep on it, we would obviously spend as much time as you want. But the EDC is clearly driving down this road. In addition, we support everybody who's trying to do this work in the city. There's several hundred housing units being built right outside our window right now. We meet with Bonaccio, we meet with some of the smaller developers, even Chris Patton, who's sometimes very hard to be a partner with. We have been, I think, a clear supporter. And as they look to figure out what they're going to do next, we're engaged with them too. The last thing that's really important here is the LDC's pre-development fund. It's the first significant move of taking the LDC's money and using it beyond their traditional revolving loan fund. We're essentially advancing money to developers, particularly in the rest of the county, where the fear of going through a planning board process to be turned down oftentimes acts as its own speed brake. A developer says, why would I go invest 2 years and $50,000 or $100,000 just to have people angry and say no? So what we've tried to do is at least address one part of that, which is to say, well, what if we essentially made that investment that you would have to make of money potentially not a balance sheet issue for you? So typically the ones we've approved so far have been in the $25,000 to $50,000 range. We advance the money that allows them to enter in without a cash impact to the planning process. We then assist them as they go through the planning process in the community. If they move forward, it gets rolled into the construction loan. If it doesn't move forward, it turns into a long 10-year low interest note. So it essentially became a very small bet. We've had now 2 of those that have gone through, and we have 7 more pending. The next one is tourism. What are we involved in tourism? By the way, I remember Ed telling me when I was on the board, we should stay completely out of tourism. This is the third rail. Vicki and others ran into trouble here. We can't not be involved in tourism. We have expanded and will continue to expand board roles to represent this sector. We have a rich relationship with the Lake George Chamber, with many of the businesses that operate as cornerstones in what we consider to be the experience economy. And all of our work in North Creek was based on the idea that this is a community that should be able to participate in a more robust way in this, because it's one of the few things they can do. So we've spent years trying to increase the public support for capacity, led to their infrastructure, their development of a sewer and wastewater system, which is now in the final stages of construction. We saw the $25 million investment that the state made when they had something to connect to. That then begat the redevelopment of the old Phoenix Hotel and more than $10 million of turning that into a modern property. We're now starting to see others come into that community, all with the intention of adding additional sales tax, OC tax, and employment base so they can participate beyond just Gore Mountain for 100 days a year. That's the kind of role that we play. But it's not free. I'm still on the committee, the sewer committee in North Creek. I'm not even sure it's appropriate, but we've been on it for 5 years. And we continue to be out there every single week, but we are making progress. There's now more than $40 million worth of development that has occurred that would never have occurred without those fundamental elements being addressed. That is a model for how we should engage in the entire area. Lake George doesn't need us in the same way that North Creek did, but Lake George needs different things. We were in a conversation yesterday with Ray, the village mayor, and talking about investments that we can make that are aligned with the efforts they have from their DRI to produce even more value. The intention here is to continue to strengthen the year-round tourism economy, to make the economics of it more robust for both property owners and participants, employees in that, and to make sure that everybody understands that we will never, ever have an economy here that doesn't have this as a fundamental cornerstone. It needs to be invested in. We need to be involved in the hard discussions about how OCTAX is spent. Don't mind being on the front line of that. Sometimes people agree with us, sometimes they don't. But our position is always OCTAX money, just like any other public investment, should deliver some long-term value. It should not simply be to sustain, it should be to grow. If we think there's an opportunity to create additional surface area, additional growth in this sector, we're going to advocate for expense to do that. OCTAX money was pledged against North Creek's sewer to help ensure that there was backing for that. It's still a controversial move in this area, but I believe it's the right one if we're speaking from the position of the economy. That money delivering a ongoing return is exactly how at least some portion of OCTAX should be used. And we're going to continue to do that. Our grants. We're now in active, the grant process with ESD is Byzantine. So it's like 12 steps. The Connect All grant, which is the overlay of the cell network for downtown Glens Falls, downtown Lake George, and a deployable asset for the county. We've actually been awarded the grant, but that doesn't mean that we have the money. So now what happens after you've been awarded the grant is you enter into a period where you then secure the financing model to demonstrate that you have the means to execute it. In the same time, there's a public hearing that Empire State Development has, and then their board eventually approves the outlay of money. And that leads to what's the next step called?
We have the incentive proposals
Yeah.
signed, but it's the disbursement.
The disbursement agreement. So
Disbursement.
we will likely see the disbursement agreement associated with the cellular overlay grant in roughly 3 months. So right now, we're deeply engaged with the city of Glens Falls, the village of Lake George, and the county as to what their outlay would be. It's all reimbursable. Other than the $20,000 that it costs for us simply to have made application for the grant, which we agreed to divide up equally amongst the 4 stakeholders, including us. So there's $5,000 each that's in and we'll never get back. Now the question is the financing for each one of the entities. About $1 million worth of equipment that's looking to be deployed and about $1 million worth of services to measure and support that over a multi-year period. The $1 million of outlay for the construction is what the municipalities would have to carry in the beginning. So we're sitting down with each one of them to say, here's what the implication would be. We would oversee the work. We would pay the vendors. You would have to pay us the money so that we could pay the vendors. We would then go to ESD to seek reimbursement. When we got the reimbursement checks, we would then redistribute those back out to the municipalities. This becomes a cash flow issue. It's essentially a line of credit that each municipality is issuing here. We're sitting down with each one of them to talk about what that would look like in terms of dollars and timing. And then they would have to proceed with whatever is the appropriate path if they were to continue down this road with us. Lake George is very excited about this as a revenue opportunity for them that they think will be almost immediate in terms of cash flow positive for them. The city is still trying to figure it out. The previous administration had one direction, the new administration is trying to figure out what their direction is. We actually met with the bid yesterday to talk about the downtown business district, to talk about what role, if any, they might play in this. And then the county will be the last one, although I think theirs is the most straightforward. They would like a deployable cell asset that would essentially extend the cell network to not only events, but all kinds of uses. That's their piece of this. But the county stands to benefit from the sales tax growth that occurs in all of these other areas, and they recognize that. So that's why they're a full partner in this. This is a lot of work. I gotta tell you, to run around trying to go secure a couple $1 million that is essentially gonna deliver value into those places. And again, our piece of this will be relatively modest, probably in the neighborhood of $10,000, $20,000 a year for us to oversee this. But it is aligned with what we're trying to do. The Power Up Grant is the idea of bringing high-capacity second power feed to the Glens Falls section of the riverfront. We're in the development process of figuring out how that would be financed. That's, again, a reimbursement grant, but the reimbursement's millions of dollars, not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So this becomes much more vexing. We're engaged with the entities that would potentially be recipients of that, the municipalities on both sides of the river that would be beneficiaries of that, and with Empire State Development. I don't know whether we're going to be able to see this one all the way through. We're just trying to figure out if it's even doable. But it does highlight an issue that I wanted to bring to your attention. If we do successfully sell lots for the first time in decades, we should be thoughtful about what we do with the proceeds. I wish we had several $100,000 that we could use to act as a buffer for some of these things that we know would serve the community and would allow us to say yes faster, particularly to grants that are in that $1 to $2 million range. If we had a couple $100,000 that we could direct so that we could be the ones that acted as the cash flow credit line for this, we could go even faster. And right now that property is illiquid. It's just sitting on our balance sheet. But if it turns into cash, that might be a good use of the cash. Turn it into a revolving loan fund to ourselves. Small business. We've been asked, and Judy, this is important. I've talked to the mayor about it, but I think it's really important for the city. We've been asked by many of the businesses up and down South Street to engage in different parts of the process. I'm going to the planning board meeting in Glens Falls during their next cycle to represent or at least advocate for several new businesses on the street. With this wave of development has come a realization that our, what I consider to be fairly sleepy process here in Glens Falls around code building may not be able to keep pace. When we have outsiders who come from other areas and they have a different way of assuming how these things are done, they oftentimes confront a process that is very, very different. It's also not well understood. I can't even explain what it is. We have the planning board reviewing internal changes. Downstairs, our boba factory or boba shop has to go before the planning board before they can continue to paint. That's weird. I don't understand it. I think it's a vestige of a process that was designed for another time, and we have to go engage so we can first understand it, and then second of all, hopefully be an ally and advocate for whatever is the appropriate next chapter. But it's a good problem to have. We have outside investment coming up and down the street. They walk in here and say, can you help us? Happy to help them. This is not an adversarial relationship. This is the role we're supposed to play. I'm thrilled by the energy that's happening on the street. I think that there can be some really positive change that comes out of this. I want you to know about it. We didn't stick our nose in it. We were asked to participate, to help figure this out. Is this really the best practice? Is this really the way other communities work? Is this really the way that's going to help us achieve our goals? I don't know the answers to the questions, but we're engaged. Indeed, in Lake George, it's a little bit less of that and a little bit more of helping them through the mechanics of the DRI. But they're well underway there as well. One last thing that's really important to understand. We have 2 opportunity zones in Warren County. The federal government just redid the entire opportunity zone legislation, which was designed to bring investment to big sectors that were undevelopable. Used to be urban blight that was attempted to be addressed by this more than a decade ago. The 2 opportunity zones are Ward 1, yeah? Ward 4. 4 in Glens Falls.
Along
Broad Street.
Hanford, Broad Street. Yeah.
Broad Street, basically right up to the edge of South Street here. That was determined to be an opportunity zone more than a decade ago, and the entire town of Johnsburg, which is the largest opportunity zone in New York. We really have not had any development that's aligned with opportunity zones in either place. But the real opportunity here, the reason it was struck, was to attract opportunity. If somebody makes a real estate nexus decision there, locates there, and they then sell their business or go through some liquidation event, they used to be able to essentially mitigate roughly 25 to 50% of their capital gains from that. The new legislation is 100%. So if you located a business in one of these areas and then sold it for $50 million.
10 years.
Over a 5 to 10 year period, it's graduated. But after 10 years, it's 100%. That's significant. You avoid all capital gains taxes. Meanwhile, the state came and said, well, given that this is a new change and seems really cool, it's designed to bring rural entities into the fold. They then said every opportunity zone is going to be reevaluated. And they took ours away. They gave one to South Glens Falls and they gave one to Corinth, which is really weird. Don't understand it. We're advocating actively that we maintain the 2 that we have. I don't know whether this is a really big fight or just an administrative fight, but we're trying to protect what we have while we figure out what we can do with it. We talked a lot about North Creek, but there's 2 or 3 things that are important to understand. That will be our first nexus in childcare. This is really important for us in a variety of ways. One, that the community invited us in. They've got ARPA funds that they've got to expend this year. They've already assigned them to childcare. I think it's more than $30,000 that they want to apply towards some kind of child structure or childcare model in North Creek. We're happy to help them with that, but it's our partnership with the community that led them to say, will you help us make this part of a broader effort? So Mary and I are literally going to go to North Creek first as we look through the entire Adirondack region because there's resources and momentum already there. I don't see our board representative from Stewart's. I do see you, Paul. I do see you, Sue. The 3 of you, together with Ashley, will be engaged in this. Because you have surface area throughout the park, not you personally, but you as organizations. We'll be asking for you to participate in the conversations about how would this work? What do you see as needs, not only as employers, but also what do you see as needs for the communities that you serve? What are models that you believe should be addressed? We need your voice in this because it's been missing. Right now, the only people who talk are people who are already dealing with the childcare system as it is. I think you know this better than anyone. Mm-hmm. And like, if we're going to ever get them to consider things they're not doing now, it's going to come from voices that are not part of the conversation now. Even though I think some of you may have been individually. What we will do is start to structure a way that's fairly low maintenance for you to participate, but clearly will allow you to help influence what happens. And then we'll grow it from there. We'll include many other business entities that have maybe a less universal presence in the park, but definitely have a presence in North Creek. So you'll be hearing from us quickly about that.
I think that's something from Councilman Powers, is that right? In North Creek for something in Tanner Center.
Yeah, the Tannery Pond.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're developing a roundtable, which is their first stop on this train. We're going to jump in and help facilitate that roundtable. Mary and I will be involved in that, not to take it over, but to bring new elements to it that wouldn't have been brought before. Remember that there's several $1 million that's being pledged by the Rockefeller Family Fund that we are the conduit to. So I think that in this way, we become a strategic ally, but we want to ensure that the voice of business, particularly business entities that are involved across the entire park, underlie whatever it is that we advocate for and point towards. And one thing I think very strongly, Sue, is that we should readdress this issue about how we engage the schools. Mm-hmm. We shouldn't allow the barriers that have stymied us from before to stay. Mm-hmm. That should be at least one of the models we pursue. On the healthcare side, we've been engaged, obviously, with both the hospital and Hudson Headwaters around issues like 340B. We will continue to be. We helped launch the so far very successful redevelopment of the emergency room in the complex at the hospital. We're actively involved with Hudson Headwaters in a whole variety of things. There are also ancillary healthcare nodes that have come to talk to us about developing in and around your campus, Sue. I'm sure you're aware of those. We continue to act as an advocate for them. A fairly recent development is that John Ruggie, in his now individual life, not as a representative of Hudson Headwaters, but as a pioneer of healthcare in the North, has come and he and a loose group of mostly retired physicians leading an effort to educate people about what the Medicaid cuts are likely to do in the North Country. To me, we can benefit from helping take the momentum he's creating around that, together with some of the other issues about what would a sustainable healthcare system look like in the north. And this is hard. Not all the facilities that are out there are destined to survive. In this environment, I just can't imagine that every rural healthcare entity, some of the smaller hospitals throughout the park may not survive. But we need to make sure that some workable, scalable, addressable system does. We're still figuring out what we can do to help John in his effort, but I think it's another interesting point. He came to us and said, can you help us bring this conversation to a larger audience across the park? I think you're starting to discern the same trend that maybe we've been seeing for some time, which is that we are seen as an asset that goes well beyond Warren County, because there really is nothing like us north of this. How we do that, and what are the mechanics of it, and how do we make sure it aligns, that's the open-ended question. Matt, we have a beautiful picture of you and Nancy.
Don't forget the puppy.
Oh, really?
If you haven't been to this facility, it's like going to an outdoor recreation attraction. It's far more than just a shop. And it's also really important that we take a second to recognize that Matt and Nancy were pioneers in what we're seeing around us in Glens Falls. More than a decade ago, they put their faith in this place, and they put their money and their time in this place. And I think we not only owe them a huge debt of gratitude from the EDC standpoint, but I think as the business community at large, we need to not only support them, but celebrate them. I'm so thrilled to see the growth that they have, but it's also a success story. It's an opportunity for others to see what is possible. Really grateful for all that you've done as a business and all you've done here at the EDC, Matt, and we can't wait to support the growth of this place.
Well, it all started with Judy, the EDC, Ed, or LDC, Ed. You know, they gave us a loan, and I saw Chuck Barton at the foundation thing the other night, Common Roots, and I said to him, I said, I remember when they were figuring out who the heck Nancy and I were, and if we had any experience. And the mayor said, no, you're gonna rent to them. You know, the coffee shop that just closed, and two newbies with no experience in retail said, we wanna lease this space. And the mayor said, no, we're doing this. You're gonna be the landlord. And he said, okay. And here we are. So yeah, it's crazy. And then the new shop is really kind of an extension to help downtown. You know, downtown had been honestly trending off for a couple of years down. So the new shop has kind of helped that, pick that momentum back up, and is now carrying the Glens Falls shop. The reason I note that here in this room is it's an interesting economic indicator, right? We need the momentum to continue downtown because it has slowed down a little bit. And you know, I think from a planning and economic development standpoint, for the first time, for 15 years, I've said we don't have a parking problem. We are just starting to hear it. We are getting customers that are going to, we aren't poaching business. We kind of separated the lines a little bit in what we're carrying, but we clearly are poaching traffic from the Glens Falls shop to the new shop into parking. So it's, I hate to be that, you know, person that's saying, no, we have a parking problem, but it's slowly building right now, right? We've got 600 or 700 apartments, and we did not plan for parking. And that's, we don't want to be the Saratoga, right? We've got to, that's got to get reversed. And it's delicate, and I would love to talk with the mayor about it, but without being a chicken little screaming about parking, we have to do something about that, because it's gonna hurt, right? We don't have the vast spaces that they have in Saratoga, all the side streets that have a ton of parking. They even have a problem with that, right? Anyway, but I've just been the last few months, we're like, okay, because Keenan, you know, they keep little notebooks, they keep notes for us, and we have staff meetings, and they report what's going on, what are people looking for, what don't we have, and that has been since the holidays, last fall, it really started to pick up, and we're like, okay, you know, we've never been the Walmart or Target model where you can see the front door. That's not our customer. Our customer will walk across town. They don't care, right? They're hikers, they're outdoors. Never been an issue for us. It's quietly becoming an issue when they're saying it to us, right? But, so that's our, I think our one challenge downtown, because the people living here is gonna be great for us. Like that traffic is gonna be phenomenal, walking traffic.
They're gonna be taking up some of the parking.
Yeah.
It's also a matter of how to get to the parking. Signage needs to be improved, so I know where to go.
Yeah.
The bid is working on a wayfinding project right now. It all stemmed from that old wooden exchange tree sign that a car hit like a year ago outside of Fruit Betty. And that we got insurance money to replace that, which was a ridiculous amount of insurance money for what the sign was. But it has stemmed this bigger project of parking, not only business signs and pointing in the right direction of where the new farmer's market is, and where the library is, and the hospital, but also where the parking is. Yeah. And that will come with big signs you can read in your car or
We don't necessarily know the answer, but we do know we need to be involved in the process. And we're engaged with both the city and the business community and act as a bridge. But one of the tools that didn't exist before is the potential of the cellular overlay network to act as the system that could direct people to parking, manage the parking, help us figure out what is the right scheme. I'm not sure that we will go down that road, but we have a resource we could use that.
I was talking to Luke, brother-in-law the other night, and Nance and I have 2 spots in the mill parking garage, right? We pay the city about $1,000 a year, it's not cheap. But during the day, those 2 spots are wide open, right? So trying to think of an app or something that would allow that spot to be shared, right? Like, so I offered it to the engineers at LaBella, because I do a ton of work with them, they're right in the mill. And I said, if you guys need 2 parking spots during the day, I have 2, you just use them.
It's like when you go into the airport and it says H4.
Yeah.
Like we need something.
The difficult thing is timing, right? Is
Yeah.
when I get home at 7 or 8 or 9,
Right,
that spot's gotta be open.
right.
I'm parking there. And so that's like the, kind of the not clean part of having a parking share program, but during the day, it's wide open, right? And then JMZ's probably got maybe 12 or 14 spaces in there. They're open all night for events and on the weekend. When I go to get in my car on Saturday, that whole first level is open except for 4 cars, right? It's like all weekend long, somebody could use those spots.
Yeah.
So,
The law firm's parking over here at night is completely empty.
Right.
People, and I'm sure.
but it's gotta be open
Yeah,
7 in
you
the morning,
assume
showing
only
shows
you're
up
not
at work.
supposed to park there because it's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, if you live here, you know these things, you know where to go. If you're coming here to visit, and we're getting more and more people, I think, even from Saratoga coming here to go to our restaurants.
Yeah.
They don't know it. They don't live here.
I was thinking that my spot is open from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. today, right? And I can just go click, and I'm not
I'm
gonna
sure
be
this
here.
exists in other
I'm
cities.
sure. Right?
There's no need to recreate, yeah, it's gotta be there, right?
Anyway, sorry to hijack.
Well, I think the city's also, I had a conversation with Mayor Palmer about this, just to maybe wrap it up, but there were conversations with Hudson Headwaters at 90 South Street, area that's already closed, and with Aerobank about, after
yeah,
5 o'clock, using those parking lots, and that would come with signage, like big signage,
Yeah.
to say, like,
You gotta be out.
you, yeah, well, you are, yeah, but also you're allowed to park here.
You're available for the, your, Guyver facility is available for, on Saturday mornings for the
Yeah,
parking.
It's after
Diana
5
featured
p.m.
that in
Yes.
her recent speech
Yeah.
about a model that they're trying to develop in
Until we
Mobile.
go.
And the
until we
parking
open
garage
up
Saturday
Saturday.
morning.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're
JMZ spots are wide
Not
open.
yet, but
All week long.
eventually, but it is a problem for us because we've grown there, and it's a problem to have enough places for staff and then for our patients that come. It's been okay, and then we have now spread out Women's Health to go to 4 of our other facilities, so they're going to Warrensburg and Monroe and West Mountain to mitigate the parking issue and to also allow our patients to have different locations to go for.
Right now, wherever Ed is though, he's like, this is the problem I was.
Absolutely.
So we're thrilled about it, we're engaged in it, and we will continue to talk about it. One thing I wanted you to know, Matt, is that when I have a feature here about Carol McGulihan and her husband who have opened a shop down the street called Hometown. They see you and you and Nancy personally and your shop as a role model of what they're trying to do. They want to be staples in a community that is developing here in a way that not only sells goods, but that feels like you're connected. And I had a lengthy conversation with both of them ahead of their opening. They are a really wonderful sign of the fact that what you guys did is now replicated through. And someday, by the way, she would be a wonderful addition to our community in some way. Our committee structures, maybe sometime as a future board member. This woman is incredibly talented. She's 32 with a law degree and a engineering degree, and she's done 3 major public housing projects in Westchester County, the smallest of which was 260 units. She won the award as the housing project manager of the year for the state of New York last year.
Wow.
And she's opening a shop down the street. The reason I go through all that is that intellectual capital is what's rolling into our town and was inspired by not only you, but by the continued work that has been going on here for a decade. And it's just a really encouraging sign.
There's a compliment for you in there that they want you to mention.
What's that?
This is a compliment in there for you, they want you to mention that.
Yeah, we met when we're on the foundation. It's funny because that's kind of the model now, right? Like it's a hobby.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, you're not paying the mortgage, you're having a side business.
I barely pay my
Right.
It isn't, it's reality, you know. I tell people it took 5 years to make a dime and 10 years to actually, pay dinner. Like, this is not,
Right,
We're not
you're
getting-
passionate.
we're not becoming
about it.
millionaires on small businesses like that. It's the community, we've got great kids that work for us, it's just a different kind of mission in life, I guess.
Well, it's working. Thank you. One last thing. I saw Jeff. I said I would tell everybody,
Yes.
the playoffs start next week. Wednesday will be the first home game. They still have tickets available, and in fact, he has this promotion for the downtown business community. I think the weekend games are probably already sold out, but if you want to be a part of it, and I think this is one of the great things about this place is when it ramps up for this. Next Wednesday is when it starts, and he says, send people over and we'll give them a discount. On Wednesday night. After that, you're on your own.
If you're a season ticket holder, you gotta go get the tickets, so. So you gotta go pick them up.
I know that was long, but I think we're on a good path. And we have new people, we have new energy, we're gonna develop hopefully more structure, more alignment. But we're thrilled with where we are, and we appreciate all of your time and energy. I need to steal your for a moment when the meeting's over for a conversation that we can.
I can call this meeting. Oh, I didn't take a motion to close and adjourn the meeting. By Matt, seconded by Sue. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. Nice rest of your day.
Shop local.
Shop local. And bank local and get your healthcare local.
Yeah. I would have to-
Yeah, we all love to take sure.
Yeah.